In the spring of 1884, the small New Mexico settlement of Dry Creek baked under the sun. Dust swirled through its streets, carrying the smell of manure and burnt wood. On that brittle afternoon, townsfolk gathered in the square, not for market alone, but for something stranger. At the center of the crowd stood a young woman in a faded blue dress. Her name was Eliza Carrington, 22 years old, hands clenched tight at her sides, as if holding something in. Her father shoved her forward like cattle to be traded. "She can cook, sew, and keep quiet," he barked. "Anyone with coin can take her home tonight." The crowd didn't laugh, not loudly at least. Their silence was worse. Women turned away. Children peeked from behind skirts. Her father added, almost casually, "She's barren. Tried for years, nothing, but she's got steady hands and teeth in her head." That counts for something. Eliza did not plead. She had begged once, when her husband had thrown her out after 2 years of trying, when her wedding dress had been torn from her shoulders by the same hands that once promised love. Begging hadn't mattered then, and it wouldn't matter now. Her mother stood in the crowd too, shawl pulled tight, eyes fixed on the ground. She didn't speak. She didn't stop it. She only drifted away when the crowd began to break apart, as though she hadn't come to see her daughter sold. A man stepped forward, broad-shouldered, dust on his shirt, the brim of his hat shadowing most of his face. He smelled of horse and pine. Without looking Eliza over, without a word, he dropped a pouch of coin on the table. "You sure?" her father asked. "She don't come with a refund." The man didn't flinch. "She won't be judged anymore," he said, and turned away. Eliza bent to pick up her small satchel, an old pair of shoes, and a locket with her mother's face inside, and followed him. His name, she would learn later, was Caleb Thatcher. Caleb's wagon waited by the blacksmith, hitched to a pair of mules, as quiet as their owner. Eliza climbed into the seat beside him. He handed her a dented canteen. "Long ride," he said. The water tasted like tin, but it was wet, and that was enough. They rolled out of Dry Creek, the prairie opening before them like a blank page. The sky stretched forever. Fence posts leaned tired into the earth. Caleb spoke little, and Eliza didn't press him. She studied his hands on the reins. Scarred knuckles, a strip of torn cloth wrapped around one finger. "No ring. Why'd you take me?" she asked finally. He didn't look at her. "5 kids," he said. "No mother, no time." Her throat tightened. "So I'm a governess?" "No," he said. "Just someone not cruel. That's enough." By dusk they reached his ranch, a weathered house that leaned westward, a grey barn behind it, chickens darting through the yard. Inside the cabin, 5 children stared with wide eyes. 4 boys, 1 girl. Their mother had died of fever 2 winters ago. Since then, silence had filled the house louder than any storm. "This is Eliza," Caleb said. "She'll be staying." The youngest, barely 5, ran to him and wrapped arms around his leg. Caleb lifted the child with one arm, opened a door with the other, and nodded toward the stairs. "Room's upstairs. Water's still warm." Eliza climbed slowly, hand brushing the wall, and sat on the edge of a narrow bed. She didn't cry, not yet, but her hands trembled. Life in the cabin was no kinder than the land outside. Eliza burned beans, ruined bread, spilled the coffee pot, and jabbed her fingers sewing socks. She braced for the shouting, the slap, the cruelty she had known before. Instead, when she dropped an iron pot of stew with a crash, Caleb stepped inside, crouched down, and cleaned it himself. "It's just stew," he said simply, and walked back out. Eliza stood frozen, rag in hand, heart pounding. But this time the heat in her chest wasn't shame. It was something quieter, something she had no name for. That night, when one of the children burned with fever, Eliza boiled herbs, pressed cool cloths, and hummed lullabies until the girl's breathing eased. By dawn, the child whispered, pancakes. And Caleb, standing in the doorway, looked at Eliza as though he saw her for the first time. The next morning, a note waited by the stove. Just 2 words in stiff, uneven handwriting. Thank you. She held it longer than she meant to. Seasons turned, and Eliza's hands grew steady again. Bread rose. Beans stayed whole. She stitched scarves for each child, taught letters by candlelight, sang soft songs over cracked bowls, and braided ribbons into hair. The first time one of them called her Mama, it came out like breathing. Then another said it, then another, until it was no longer a mistake, but a truth. For the first time, Eliza said yes without speaking. Love grew quietly between her and Caleb, like the garden she coaxed from the dust. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't claimed. It was chosen again and again, after both had been seen for who they truly were. When strangers came with polished wagons and promises of money for their land, Caleb refused. Together, he and Eliza nailed a sign at the fence line. Not for sale. Years passed. Children grew tall, then gone. Grandchildren filled the halls. The garden spread wild and stubborn, flourishing where it shouldn't. Every morning, Caleb stood on the porch with his coffee, watching Eliza move between the rows like a woman who belonged. And when she was laid to rest beneath the oak tree, Caleb carved her headstone himself. Here grew everything she was never given, and all that she gave anyway. When his time came, he was buried beside her. The swing still swayed in the wind. The garden still bloomed, even when the rains forgot their way. Travelers passing by slowed their wagons to read the sign at the fence. Not for sale, because sometimes land remembers those who refuse to leave. And sometimes dry hills bloom for the ones who chose love when no one else did.